Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News, India's voice to the world. I'm Lipakshi Kurana, coming up in the next hour. Israel offers ceasefire if half of hostages held are released, even as Hamas rejects additional demand to disarm. UN says humanitarian crisis in Gaza at its worst. US sets stage for imposing tariffs on pharmaceuticals and semiconductors as it announces national security investigations into their imports. US Education Department freezes $2.3 billion funding to Harvard after university rejects federal demands. Mark Zuckerberg testifies at a landmark US antitrust trial as Meta stands accused of unfair practices to acquire Instagram and WhatsApp. Case could see forced divestment of both apps. And in sports, world number 1 Magnus Carlsen beats Hikaru Nakamura to clinch the Paris Freestyle Chess Grand Slam. And on to the details now. Gaza peace talks mediator Egypt said it received an Israeli proposal for a temporary ceasefire in Gaza that would pave the way for negotiations towards a permanent cessation of hostilities. In its proposal, Israel offered a ceasefire of at least 45 days in exchange for the release of half of the remaining hostages held in the Palestinian territory and the entry of aid. The proposal also includes the disarmament of Hamas and all Palestinian armed factions in the Gaza Strip as a condition for a permanent end to the conflict. Mediators Egypt and Qatar have presented the new Israeli proposal for a Gaza ceasefire to Hamas. Hamas leaders, meanwhile, said they were reviewing the ceasefire proposal and would respond as soon as the necessary internal consultations are completed. The group informed the mediators that it is willing to agree to any proposal that includes a permanent ceasefire, a full Israeli withdrawal from the Gaza Strip and the entry of aid. Hamas, however, had rejected any clauses that would see it forced to disarm. Hamas and the resistance factions' position is that the resistance's weapons are a red line and non-negotiable. Well, Hamas took 251 hostages during the October 7, 2023 attacks that set off the conflict. Some 58 are still held in Gaza, including 34 the Israeli military says are dead. And French President Emmanuel Macron on Monday urged a reform of the Palestinian Authority as part of a plan for the West Bank-based body to govern a post-conflict Gaza without Hamas. Macron called his Palestinian counterpart Mahmoud Abbas on Monday after last week announcing France could take the unprecedented step of recognizing a Palestinian state in coming months, sparking ire from Israel. After the phone call, Macron on social media said that France is fully mobilized to obtain the return of all hostages, the return of a lasting ceasefire and immediate access for humanitarian aid into Gaza. Macron has said France could recognize a Palestinian state during a United Nations conference in New York in June. France is among European nations to have backed a plan for Gaza to return to the control of the Palestine-based authority after nearly 2 decades of Hamas rule if a ceasefire deal is reached to end the conflict with Israel. And the United Nations on Monday said Gaza was facing its most severe humanitarian crisis since the conflict began, with no aid entering the territory for weeks. Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs said no supplies had reached Gaza for a month and a half since Israel ended a 2-month ceasefire and began blocking their delivery. And the U.S. State Department has approved the potential sale of Iron power pack engines and related equipment to Israel for an estimated cost of $180 million. The principal contractor for the sales will be Rolls-Royce Solutions America. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency in a statement said the United States is committed to the security of Israel and it is vital to U.S. national interest to assist Israel to develop and maintain a strong and ready self-defense capability. Well, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani in Qatar's capital. Qatar and Egypt agreed to work towards a package of $7.5 billion in direct Qatari investments. The two also discussed the situation in West Asia, stressing on the importance of working to cease the fighting in the enclave. Well, Egypt is pushing ahead with efforts to secure funding from Gulf neighbors and foreign partners as it seeks to tackle heavy foreign debts and a gaping budget deficit. Well, last year, Egypt signed a deal with Abu Dhabi-based sovereign fund ADQ to develop a city at Ras Al Hikma on Egypt's north coast. And the United States signaled a fresh escalation in its trade war on Monday, this time hinting at tariffs on semiconductors and imported pharmaceuticals, deepening global market jitters. President Donald Trump said he expects to impose tariffs on foreign-made pharmaceuticals in the not-too-distant future, adding to the growing list of goods targeted in Washington's trade offensive. The move is likely to impact major global suppliers and further fuel economic uncertainty.
Make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, is very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come.
And the U.S. Department of Education has frozen more than $2.3 billion in federal funding for Harvard University just hours after the school rejected President Donald Trump's demands that it make deep policy changes on diversity. The move marks a new level of contentiousness between President Donald Trump's administration and American universities. It accuses of being captured by the extreme left. Trump administration has frozen hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding for numerous universities, pressing the institutions to make policy and other changes and citing what it says is a failure to fight anti-Semitism on campus. However, Harvard on Monday rejected Trump administration demands that to receive federal funding, it ends diversity efforts and take other steps that the university said would stifle intellectual freedoms of faculty and the students. To ease any funding crunch created by any cutoff in federal funding, Harvard is working to borrow $750 million from the Wall Street. And on this, DD India's Akshay Dongre joins us for more. Well, Akshay, how do you think Harvard's refusal to comply with the Trump administration's demands likely to impact not just its basic funding, but broader higher education policies and university autonomy across the country, most importantly?
Well, now we are looking at a tussle between the US administration and the universities. Now, while the universities call themselves private in nature, but there has always been a substantial amount of funding that was given by the US government to these universities, including the Harvard University. And we have seen that in the past few months, Donald Trump has been reportedly making this claim that he is reviewing and his administration is reviewing the $9 billion in funding that is given to the Harvard University, one of the oldest university and most prestigious across the world. But it's not just the Harvard University that is in tussle with the US administration over the rules that the Trump administration want the universities to follow. Now, there are multiple rules that include the screening of international students, that is disclosure of their DEI, that is diversity, equality and integration policies, as far inclusivity policies for the students and the faculty as well, which mandates that the faculty must represent all the communities that are living in inside the country. That includes people from different ethnic groups, from different racial groups, even from different sexual orientation. So that is the DEI policies which the Trump administration has been acting against, and has been asking the Harvard administration also to disclose the number of hirings that have been done under the DEI policies. So that is one. And Harvard had refused to comply with the Trump administration, and perhaps that's the reason why, and in fact that's the reason why the Trump administration has gone against Harvard by freezing the 2.3 billion in funding. Now this is a substantial amount of money that comes in from the US Department and US government, and that enables the universities such as Harvard or Columbia University, which is facing similar kind of funding freeze, about $400 million by the Trump administration. Now the entire matter escalated when the pro-Palestinian groups had made camps inside the campuses. They were protesting, and this all started under the Biden administration. But as soon as the Trump administration took over, not only the police was used to dislodge the protesters from the campuses, but also action was taken against the students who have been taking an anti-Israeli stand. So that is what the tussle majorly is all about. But besides that, there were other issues as well, which had seen the Trump administration, having some sort of friction with the university, especially the eminent universities of the US. So this is likely to continue in the future as well. However, the funding freeze will hit the functioning of the Harvard University, because this is a significant chunk of money that is required to run the university like Harvard, which includes scholarships to international students, that includes other functioning administration, because all of it cannot be done only through the fees of the students. And if this funding freeze continues, then we can expect the fees of these universities to go significantly higher, scholarships to be stopped, and a severe dent to the image of universities such as Harvard or Columbia or other prestigious universities in the US. But these decisions are in all probability going to be challenged in the courts of the US, and that is where the final decision may come from, whether this funding will continue or this will be removed by the Supreme Court or the other courts of the United States.
Right, Akshay. In fact, as you said, increasing fee will be a further blow for the students, which is already very high. And talking about the academic freedom, how will this funding freeze affect the future federal involvement in the university policy, especially around issues like diversity and its freedom?
Well, we have seen that the Trump administration has been acting against the DEI policies. In fact, they have already frozen the hirings that were done under the DEI policies that mandated that people not only in private entities but also in the government should be hired from different diverse backgrounds that include racial groups, ethnic groups, religious groups, even people with different sexual orientation, so that proper representation is what was claimed by the DEI when it was pitched, that proper representation will be given in the government for all the ethnic groups of all the different groups across the country. However, the Trump administration has been questioning the efficiency of DEI policies and said that diversity cannot be brought at the cost of efficiency and safety along with security of these very important administrations that are running the country. So perhaps that's the reason why the Trump administration has been trying to force its way to stop the DEI or disclosure of DEI hirings of other structures that the university run through, including the immigrants that come in from across the world to study as students there, that mandated a screening of the immigrants. So the university was not implementing all of that. So if the funding freeze continues, and if, let's say, the courts cannot intervene in this, then certainly fees will increase. That will make make students from especially the developing countries or underdeveloped countries who go to the university through scholarship almost impossible to study in universities such as Harvard, Columbia and other universities across the US.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Akshay, for all those insights. And moving on, UN Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent expressed full support of Donald Trump's government for the economic reforms underway in Argentina in a meeting with its president, Javier Milei. At the Government House in Buenos Aires, Bessent also praised Milei for his government's decision to reduce barriers to reciprocal trade with the United States. Milei said that the Argentine government understands the U.S. reciprocal tariff proposal and is ready to sign a trade agreement. At the meeting, Bessent congratulated the government for the negotiations with the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Fund. On April 11th, Argentina sealed an extended facilities program with the IMF for $20 billion in addition to loans with the World Bank and the IDB and announced the relaxation of exchange market controls. And still to come on DD India News Hour. In spite of US Supreme Court ordering return of migrant wrongly deported, El Salvador president rules out his. After the positive and constructive first round of indirect talks, US and Iranian officials brace up for the second round in Rome on Saturday. And the first all-female space flight in more than 60 years successfully returned to Earth aboard a Blue Origin rocket.
Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on, shifting focus to Russia-Ukraine conflict now. US President Donald Trump on Monday once again blamed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for Russia's invasion and accused him of responsibility for millions of deaths. During a meeting in the Oval Office with the President of El Salvador, Trump placed blame of the Russian-Ukraine conflict not just on Russian President Vladimir Putin, but also on the former US President Joe Biden and Zelensky himself. He also claimed the Ukrainian leader is constantly seeking to purchase US missiles, adding that he expects some good proposals on ending the conflict soon. Trump, however, insisted a deal to end the Ukraine conflict was possible.
That should have never been allowed to start, and Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame. To purchase missiles, you know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size, and then hope that people give you some missiles. All I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing, and I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Well, the United States and Ukraine reportedly held constructive talks last week in Washington over a proposed minerals deal aimed at giving the U.S. a share in Ukraine's lucrative rare minerals sector. A Ukrainian delegation traveled to Washington with the goal of pushing negotiations forward. Ukraine's Justice Minister Olga Stefanishyna called the consultation a positive sign in a TV appearance on Monday. The deal is reportedly being pushed by Donald Trump, who wants to serve as compensation for the military and financial aid provided to Ukraine under former President Joe Biden. And a series of explosions rocked the Russian city of Kursk near the Ukraine border early on Tuesday, reportedly damaging the residential buildings. According to the local media, the blast sparked a fire in a multi-story residential building. The cause of the explosions remain unclear. And China's President Xi Jinping called for stronger ties with Vietnam on trade and supply chains amid disruptions caused by U.S. tariffs. Xi Jinping attended the signing in Hanoi of dozens of cooperation agreements between the two communist-run nations. In Hanoi, Xi met with Communist Party General Secretary Tu Lam and Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh. The two countries signed dozens of cooperation agreements, including deals on enhancing supply chains and on cooperation over the railways. The visit, planned for weeks and part of a wider trip in Southeast Asia, comes as Beijing faces 145% U.S. duties, while Vietnam is negotiating a reduction of threatened U.S. tariffs of 46% that would otherwise apply in July after a global moratorium expires. And the United Nations and rights group have called for an end to the violence in Sudan as the second anniversary of the conflict looms, and the paramilitary rapid support forces have intensified attacks in Darfur, killing dozens of people in recent days. The United Nations said more than 300 civilians have been killed in fighting on Friday and Saturday around Zamzam and Abu Shok displacement camps and the town of El Fasher in North Darfur. This includes 10 humanitarian personnel from Relief International who were killed while operating one of the last functioning health centers in Zamzam camp. Meanwhile, Britain said on Tuesday it would provide $158 million more in aid to people in Sudan as it hosted a conference marking the 2-year anniversary of the conflict. Britain is co-hosting the London conference with the African Union, the European Union, France and Germany. Egypt, Kenya and the United Arab Emirates are among the other attendees. Britain said Tuesday's conference in London would be a chance to improve the coherence of the international response to the crisis, although Sudan criticized the fact its government was not invited for the talks. And UK's Foreign Minister David Lammy said the conference will bring together the international community to agree a pathway to end the suffering. Lammy vowed the UK will not let Sudan be forgotten as he unveiled $158 million in new aid for the country. Britain's Foreign Ministry said more than 30 million people were in desperate need and 12 million women and girls were in danger of gender-based violence. Dubbed the Forgotten War, the conflict which erupted on April 15, 2023 between Sudan's regular army and the paramilitary rapid support forces in a bitter power struggle between rival generals has created what the United Nations describes as the world's worst hunger and displacement crisis. There are also increasing fears that the tensions will spill over Sudan's borders and stir further instability in the impoverished Horn of Africa region. And President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador said that he would not order the return of the United States of a Maryland man who was mistakenly deported. Well, President Bukele made the comments during a meeting on Monday at the White House with U.S. President Donald Trump, with whom he shares a strong relationship. Despite a court order instructing the U.S. to facilitate the man's return, senior White House officials said it was up to El Salvador to decide whether to do so. The Trump administration has been fighting for days against a judge's order to return a wrongfully deported Maryland man to the United States.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States. But you can release him.
He was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump said he wants to deport some violent criminals who are U.S. citizens to El Salvador, where they would be incarcerated under an agreement with that country's government. Well, the remarks were one of the clearest signals yet that the U.S. president is serious about deporting naturalized and U.S.-born citizens, a proposal that has alarmed civil rights advocates and is viewed by many legal scholars as unconstitutional. Trump said he would only go through with the idea if his administration determined it was legal.
As possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it.
Well, a U.S. judge in Vermont ordered the Trump administration not to deport a Columbia University student and pro-Palestinian activist who was arrested upon arriving for an interview for his U.S. citizenship petition. District Judge William Sessions ordered President Donald Trump and other senior officials not to remove student Mohsen Mehdawi from the United States or take him out of the state of Vermont. U.S. Immigration and Custom Enforcement officials did not immediately respond to a request for information. Well, U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders and others from Vermont's congressional delegation labeled the detention immoral, inhumane and illegal, saying the legal U.S. residents should be afforded due process and released immediately. And moving on, the second round of talks between the United States and Iran on Tehran's nuclear program is expected to be held in Rome on Saturday. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani announced that Rome has agreed to host the meeting following request from the negotiating parties and Oman, which is acting as a mediator. Tajani announced during a visit to Japan. The first round of indirect talks between U.S. and Iranian officials took place in Oman on April 12th. Both countries have said that they have held positive and constructive talks, although the negotiations remain indirect, with Oman acting as the mediator. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi will travel to Russia this week for consultations regarding the nuclear talks with the U.S. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that Araghchi would meet his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Moscow. Also, U.S. President Donald Trump claimed on Monday that Iran has been intentionally delaying a nuclear deal with the United States. Trump cautioned Tehran against a drive for a nuclear weapon, saying it may have to face a military strike if it didn't desist from its activities. Trump said the Iranians need to move fast to avoid a harsh response because they are fairly close to developing a nuclear weapon.
I want them to be a rich, great nation. Only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Meanwhile, White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said on Monday that a diplomatic agreement with Iran will depend on working out details around verification of the country's uranium enrichment and weapon programs. And tensions between the United States and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program have spanned decades, from early cooperation to crippling standoffs and cautious diplomacy. Here's a look at the key moments in the long, complex journey towards a nuclear deal, its collapse and renewed efforts now at the dialogue.
In 1967, Iran acquired its nuclear reactor from the US under the Atoms for Peace program, which promoted peaceful nuclear development. In 1979, the Islamic Revolution toppled the US-backed Shah. US-Iran relations broke down completely, halting all nuclear cooperation. In 2002, Iran's secret uranium enrichment facility at Natanz was revealed, raising alarms worldwide. By 2003, Britain, France, and Germany had begun nuclear talks with Iran, urging it to halt enrichment. In 2006, Iran resumed enrichment, escalating tensions with the West. In 2009, the US and Iran established a secret diplomatic back channel through Oman. By 2012, US and Iranian officials had held face-to-face talks in Oman, paving the way for formal negotiations. In 2015, Iran signed the JCPOA, a landmark nuclear deal agreeing to curb on enrichment in exchange for sanctions relief. But in 2018, President Donald Trump withdrew the US from the deal, calling it the worst deal ever. In 2019, Iran began rolling back its compliance with the agreement. In 2020, an explosion struck Iran's Natanz facility, and Iran blamed Israel. In 2021, the Biden administration began indirect talks in Vienna to restore the deal, but no agreement was reached. That same year, Iran enriched uranium up to 60%, its highest level yet, close to weapons grade. In 2025, Trump returned to the White House and confirmed he had sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader proposing a new nuclear deal. On April 7 this year, the US and Iran agreed to hold indirect talks in Oman. The first round of talks took place on April 12, with both delegations in separate rooms and Oman acting as a mediator. The White House said the talks were very positive and constructive. The second round of talks are to be held on April 19th.
Well, American pop star Katy Perry and 5 other women floated in space and successfully returned to Earth on Monday aboard a Blue Origin rocket, marking the first all-female space flight in more than 60 years. The 6 female crew also included Lauren Sanchez, Gail King, former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bowe, scientist Amanda Nguyen, and film producer Kerry-Ann Flynn. The crew lifted off from West Texas and traveled to the edge of space, where they experienced a brief period of weightlessness before returning to Earth in a flight lasting around 11 minutes. The space flight was a success for Bezos' new Shepard launch vehicle, which has been developed for space tourism. Officials say the potential passengers have to pay over $150,000 to experience the journey to space. And Europe experienced its most extensive flooding in over a decade in 2024. The EU's Climate Change Monitor reported on Tuesday with almost 1/3 of its rivers swelling to bursting point. Well, swathes of the continent were inundated during the year, with the worst hit Valencia in Spain and Central and Eastern Europe. These disasters took place during the hottest year around the world and underscores the threat that flooding poses for Europe as the world warms because of human-driven climate change. Most parts of Western Europe experienced wetter than usual conditions in 2024, but eastern parts of the continent were on average drier and warmer. And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. With its first warm days of spring, the vast Karakum Desert in Turkmenistan has come to life. The sand dunes are now covered with green yandak grass, a favorite food for Turkmen camels. In this area, known as one of the oldest livestock regions in Central Asia, a record 18% increase in livestock has been recorded in 2025 compared to the same time last year. Young representatives of Islamic miniature art is crafting a rich intercultural style through his unique paintings. Blending the aesthetic traditions of Turkish art, artist work often features cats as a central motive symbol that have become the signature element in his artistic expression. Deeply immersed in the world of art from a young age, he later refined his skills through formal training in traditional Turkish arts in Istanbul. Peruvian authorities, including President Dina, along with relatives of the late writer Mario Vargas Llosa, arrive at his apartment in Lima for a private wake before his transfer to the crematorium. The demise of the novelist and Nobel laureate, who passed away at the age of 89, marks the end of the Latin America's literary golden generation. A zoo in southern Spain has welcomed a new baby Malayan tapir, an endangered species that has just 2,500 specimens left in the wild. Native to Southeast Asia, the Malayan tapir is the only living tapir species from outside the Americas and has been on the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's Red List since 2008. Pepe, the African elephant residing in Argentina, got great training for what may be the final trip of a 35-year life to a tropical elephant sanctuary in Brazil. The elephant had been living in Buenos Aires Eco Park since 1993. Ahead of saying goodbye, Pepe underwent a quarantine period in training at the Eco Park to familiarize herself with the transportation crate and reduce travel stress. And still to come, DD India News. India and Uzbekistan kick off the 6th edition of joint military exercise Dust Lake in Pune to bolster bilateral defense ties. Celebrating Father of the Nation Mahatma Gandhi's legacy of peace, South Africa installed Mahatma Gandhi's bust at the War Museum in Bloemfontein. Stay with us for a vibrant report on Bihu, a festival that marks the Assamese New Year and the arrival of spring. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana. Moving on, India and South Africa honored their shared history at the War Museum in Bloemfontein with tribute to Mahatma Gandhi and the launch of a new documentary. Consulate General of India, Durban, with India's High Commissioner Shri Prabhat Kumar and Free State MEC Moses Ketso Makume unveiled a Gandhi bust celebrating his legacy of peace and the role of Indian communities in the South African War of 1899 to 1902. The museum, dedicated to inclusive remembrance of the conflict, hosted a commemorative event which marked a meaningful step in deepening historical understanding and cultural appreciation between the two nations. DD India correspondent Nazneen Ismail reports for more.
In a powerful celebration of shared heritage and enduring friendship, High Commissioner of India to South Africa, Shri Prabhat Kumar, joint MEC of Finance, Economic Development and Tourism in the Free State, Mr. Moses Ketso Makume, at the War Museum in Bloemfontein, where they unveiled a Gandhi bust and launched a poignant new book and documentary titled Caught in the Crossfire. The event paid tribute to Gandhi's legacy of peace and resilience and spotlighted the contributions of Indian communities during the South African Anglo-Boer War of 1899 to 1902. The War Museum, which centers on the South African Anglo-Boer War, has long strived to honor the diverse groups affected by the conflict, including white, African, colored, and Indian communities. Since 2009, it has actively worked to acknowledge the contributions and sufferings of all racial groups during the war. As part of this ongoing effort, a commemorative event was held to reflect on the shared history and complex legacies of the war.
India's links with the struggle of freedom and justice in South Africa date back to the period during which Mahatma Gandhi started his Satyagraha movement in South Africa over a century ago. As it is said, while India gave Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi to South Africa gave Mahatma in return to India. As a leader of the Indian Ambulance Corps, Gandhiji, who was also a devout humanitarian, involved himself in the war to save precious life.
The evening also featured a captivating musical performance by Shadow and Light, who presented a selection of their original compositions.
The Indian story were never told in the world, and it's not just and fair. And you tell the story without sugarcoating. For nation building, for social cohesion, unique nation healing, and you must open the wounds of the past to get nation healing.
This is an important day for us because today we have unveiled the statue, the bust of Mahatma Gandhi in the War Museum in Bloemfontein. It is important because Mahatma Gandhi participated as an ambulance corps member, as a stretcher bearer in the Boer War, and showed the humanitarian angle of Mahatma Gandhi. And it is very well captured and also in the book that we unveiled today.
So in honoring the past, India and South Africa walk hand in hand toward a future enriched with shared history. I'm Nazneen for DD India, Bloemfontein, South Africa.
And security forces inducted additional troops and ramped up joint search efforts in the Lazana area of Surankote in Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch district after the security personnel made contact with terrorists on Monday night. According to a social media post by the Indian Army's White Knight Corps, the search efforts were conducted along with the Jammu and Kashmir police to prevent the terrorists from escaping. Meanwhile, the Romeo force of the Indian Army also conducted search operations in Poonch after contact was established with terrorists last night. Well, according to the officials, terrorists opened fire on the Romeo force personnel, in which one of the security personnel got injured near the Lazana village located upon the national highway connecting Poonch to Jammu. Following the incident, the area was cordoned off and additional security measures were implemented. Lazana village remains under high security as joint operations by the Army and Jammu and Kashmir police continue to prevent any escape attempts by the terrorists. And for more from there, Anubhav Mishri joins us on the phone line from Poonch. Well, Anubhav, how is the situation there right now? How are the search operations going on?
Good morning, Vibhaji. Yesterday evening, 8 hours, Army got information that presence of a few terrorists in Lassana area, Poonch district, Army and police pardoned of the area and started operation in the area. Later on, few rounds fired by terrorists on Army, in which an Army Jawan was injured. Today morning, he was airlifted to Rajouri. The Army is cordoning both right and left bank of Lassana Nala. Security forces have cordoned off entire area, and the search operation is still going on. Senior Army officials, SSP Shafkat Hussain, additional SP Mohan Shah, SP Operation Sachin Gupta, along with senior Army officers, are present and monitoring the situation.
All right. Thank you so much for all that information. And moving on, aimed at strengthening bilateral military cooperation, the 6th edition of the joint military exercise Daslik between India and Uzbekistan to commence in Pune from 15th to 28th of April 2025. This exercise will bring together contingents from the Indian Army and the Uzbekistan Army to enhance collaboration and strengthen military ties. Exercise Daslik aims to enhance joint training and facilitate the exchange of best practices in counter-terrorism operations within the sub-conventional domain. This initiative seeks to enhance military cooperation and interoperability between the two armies. Well, India's Minister of External Affairs, Gujarat, inaugurated the newly built gymnastic hall at Chotubai Purani Sports Campus in Rajpipla, Gujarat, marking another step in the government's commitment to strengthening grassroots sports infrastructure. EAM Jaishankar inaugurated gymnastics hall in Gujarat, highlighting grassroots sport development. Jaishankar highlighted the importance of initiatives like Khelo India and Fit India, calling them key efforts by the Modi government to identify and nurture sporting talent across the country.
हमारी ये कोशिश है, मोदी सरकार की कोशिश है कि भारत में हमारी जो स्पोर्टिंग टैलेंट इसको कैसे बढ़ाएं, और स्पोर्टिंग टैलेंट ग्रासरूट से बनता है कि हम जो है ऐसी जगह आए जहाँ नेचुरल टैलेंट है। यहाँ आप जानते हैं कि ट्राइबल लोग नेचुरली बड़े फिट हैं, वो टैलेंट और उसको कैसे उभर के माने उनको अवसर अपॉर्चुनिटी कैसे दिया जाए। तो मुझे लगता है कि ये एक छोटा सा उदाहरण है।
Also, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar visited the iconic Statue of Unity during his tour of Gujarat. As part of his visit to Narmada district, he also inspected the Post Office Passport Seva Kendra in Rajpipla. The minister also reviewed the services being provided at the centre and interacted with officials. The visit reflects the government's ongoing efforts to improve citizen access to passport services in remote and rural areas. And India, land of diverse cultures and festivals, welcomes the vibrant celebration of Bihu, a festival that marks the Assamese New Year and the arrival of spring. Our next report takes you to Assam, where communities come alive in colour, music and joy. Take a look.
Traditional beats echo through the air and the scent of fresh blossoms fills the atmosphere as it's time for Bihu, Assam's most cherished festival. Celebrated in mid-April, Rongali Bihu, also known as Bohag Bihu, marks the beginning of the Assamese New Year. It is a celebration of life, love, harvest and harmony with nature. People across Assam wear traditional attires, the graceful Mekhela Chador for women and Dhoti Gamcha for men, and come together to perform the iconic Bihu dance, accompanied by the rhythmic tunes of dhol, pepa and gogana. Bihu celebrations are marked by grand community gatherings, cultural showcases, and traditional featuring delicacies like pitha, laru, and doi sira. The spirit of unity and tradition is at its peak as the festival brings together people across castes and communities to celebrate the joys of rural life, gratitude for nature, and the bonds of togetherness. As Assam welcomes the new year with joy and pride, Bihu continues to stand as a symbol of resilience, cultural richness, and the Assamese way of life. From rhythmic steps to heartfelt songs, Bihu encapsulates the essence of Assam's soul. Kriti Vadhera's report for DD India.
And on to some business news now. Meta Platforms CEO Mark Zuckerberg took the stand on Monday at a high-stakes trial in Washington over U.S. antitrust enforcers' claims that the company spent billions of dollars to acquire Instagram and WhatsApp to fend off Facebook competitors. Well, the looming antitrust trial will be the first big test of President Donald Trump's Federal Trade Commission's ability to challenge the big tech. Zuckerberg responded to questions while seeking to combat allegations Meta bought the companies a decade ago to eliminate competition among social media platforms where users connect with friends and family. The FTC has pointed to emails in which Zuckerberg proposed acquiring photo-sharing app Instagram as a way to neutralize a potential Facebook competitor and expressed worry that encrypted messaging service WhatsApp could grow into a social network. The trial could stretch into July. If the FTC wins, it would have to separately prove that measures such as forcing Meta to sell Instagram or WhatsApp would restore competition. And India's frontline equity indices surged in a massive bull rally in the early trade today as positive global cues improved investor sentiment. After the opening bell, the Nifty 50 was trading at 467 points or 2.05% higher at 23,295.55, and the Sensex was trading at 1,569.89 points or 2.09% higher at 76,727.15. All the sectoral indices traded in the green, with Nifty Auto jumping nearly 3% to lead the pack. Rupee strengthened 20 paise to open at 85.85 against US dollars. According to the market watchers, US President Donald Trump's pause on tariff for 90 days brought cheer to the markets. Well, Shyama Mishra joins us on the phone line for more on this. Well, the markets opened in green. Shyama, to what extent is the rally in the Indian markets being driven by global factors like Trump's tariff pause right now versus domestic economic fundamentals?
Well, for starters, there is still uncertainty in the market, in the economy and in the world. And but after a long weekend, the Indian markets have mirrored the global markets, the international markets. And the relief, the exemption, the 90 days relief and plus the exemption on the electronic goods by the Trump administration have somewhat gotten in relief. The traders or the markets are also expecting there could be some more exemptions coming in. But yes, like I said earlier, that exemptions still linger. And amidst this, the market has found its ground. And today, after a long week, we have seen that the markets are trading in green, both Sensex and Nifty. They are trading in green, and also the back home, the quarter results of the corporates are also being announced. So that's another positive part for the markets to adhere to, and that is why we are seeing a green trading. Because if we are talking right now, so Sensex is currently plus 2 points, and even the Nifty 50 is plus 2 points. So both are 2 points up and 2 percentage points up, and we can expect that this particular rally will last till this, the exemptions, the talk of exemptions continue, and also on the ongoing strong quarter results from the Indian corporates. This will also give a boost. This will also help the market stay in the green zone, stay strengthened, and we are also hoping that this rally continues and goes upward from here.
All right, Shyama, thank you so much for all those details. And moving on, South Korea on Tuesday announced plans to invest an additional $4.9 billion in the country's semiconductor industry, citing growing uncertainty over U.S. tariffs. South Korea's finance ministry said growing uncertainty following rounds of U.S. tariff threats had left the powerful industry clamoring for government support. Well, the finance ministry in a press release said the country's chip support package would be increased by $4.9 billion. As part of the measures, the government will subsidize the construction of underground power transmission lines to semiconductor clusters, as well as increase the funding ratio for infrastructure and advanced industrial complexes to 50% from 30%. A total of 20 trillion won of low-interest loans to semiconductor companies will be offered between 2025 and 2027, up from the current 17 trillion won. This comes after U.S. President Donald Trump reportedly said he would be announcing the tariff rate on imported semiconductors soon after exempting them from his steep reciprocal tariffs on last Friday. And U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Monday that trade talks with South Korea will take place next week. In an interview to U.S. media portal, Bessent touched on plans for upcoming negotiations with Korea and Japan. Well, Bessent said the U.S. will engage in trade negotiations with South Korea next week, stressing the first mover advantage as countries are striving to strike deals with the U.S. to minimize the impact of President Trump's tariff policy on their economies. Meanwhile, Japan's government is preparing for negotiations with the United States on its tariff measures. Japanese Economic Revitalization Minister Akazawa Ryoshi, in charge of the tariff talks, will visit the U.S. on Wednesday to launch the negotiations. Well, Trump earlier this month imposed steep reciprocal tariffs on the two allies and dozens of other countries, but later placed a 90-day pause on the new tariffs. And Taiwan's economy minister said on Tuesday that the island will simulate the impact of any U.S. tariffs on the semiconductor industry. Speaking to reporters outside the parliament, Taiwan economy minister Kyo Jin-hui said he would seek to discuss the matter with the United States and ensure fair competition for Taiwanese industry. He further said the Taiwanese and U.S. chip sectors are complementary. Well, Taiwan is home to TSMC, the world's largest contract chip maker and a major supplier to companies including U.S. tech giants Apple and Nvidia. The Trump administration is probing the import of chips along with pharmaceuticals in a bid to impose tariffs on both grounds that extensive reliance on foreign production of semiconductors and medicine is a national security threat. Well, you're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for some sports news. Well, number one, Magnus Carlsen clinched the Paris Freestyle Chess Grand Slam on Monday night after seeing off Hikaru Nakamura. Carlsen defeated his American opponent Nakamura 1.5 to 0.5 in the finals after winning the first game and drawing the second to claim the title without needing a tie break. Along with the title, Carlsen took home the $200,000 first prize, reinforcing his supremacy in this new hybrid format that combines creativity with classical rigor. Meanwhile, Fabiano Caruana edged out Vincent Kema in the third place playoff, also winning the match by 1.5 to 0.5. With the win, Caruana has booked a spot in the Las Vegas Grand Slam this July. And the torches that will carry the Olympic flame for the 2026 Winter Games and Paralympics were unveiled in a dual event in Milan and Osaka on Monday. Made from recycled aluminium, the torches have been styled in two different versions, blue-colored for the Olympics and bronze for the Paralympics. Well, former cross-country skier Stefania and Paralympic fencing star Bebevio unveiled the torches in a theatre in Milan. Milan and the town of Cortina d'Ampezzo are the main hosts of the Games, which will run from 6 to 22nd February in 2026. And top seed Alexander Zverev and Ben Shelton both advanced to the second round of the Munich Open on Monday following the respective wins, while number 3 and 2-time former champion Zverev eased past Frenchman Alexandre Muller 6-4, 6-1, much to the delight of his home crowd. Well, the German lost his opener at last week's Monte Carlo Masters to Italian Matteo Berrettini, missing the chance to bump Jannik Sinner from the world number 1 position. Also, American Ben Shelton, meanwhile, needed to save 3 match points en route to beating Croat Borna Gojo 4-6, 7-6, 7-6. Shelton won both of his sets via tie-break in 2 hours and 24 minutes. And Team Panthers defeated Team White Tigers in the Polo Championship as polo enthusiasts gather to witness a thrilling fast-paced finale. Naveen Jindal emerged as the star of the evening, scoring a hat-trick and earning the title of man of the match, sealing the Panthers' victory in style. Brijesh Mathur presented the winning trophy. He's the managing partner of BMC Advisors and was also the special guest for the event. With a spirited performance from both sides and a festive atmosphere under the lights, the match was a fitting close to a memorable polo season. And Sehat Singh work astride Aska and Amar Sareen astride Bajrang have registered new national record in show jumping 6-bar with a 1.90 meter jump. Riders navigate a course of 6 vertical fences placed in a straight line in 6-bar show jumping, which gradually increase in height with each subsequent fence. Well, the rider-horse combination that completes all fences without knocking any down within the allowed number of attempts is the winner. The previous national record was established by Lieutenant Colonel Amit Sinsimwar in March 9, 2009 at Delhi Horse Show. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.